Hey there, how you doing today? I want to talk about comfort for a bit. What does that word make you think of? We tend to think of comfort as something that makes us feel better, like our favorite food, shoulder to cry on, someone telling us everything's going to be all right, buddy. Comfort is soothing, eases our pain, relieves our distress. The hotel chain Comfort Inn, for example, promises fresh linens, fluffy pillows, cable TV, good night's sleep after a hard day on the road. When we call something comforting, we usually think of something that makes us feel better. When life gets you down, circumstances just kick the snot out of you, when crushing disappointments hit you, when you just want to stop the world, so can I get off this ride? Where do you turn? Some people want comfort food, something fried, something sweet. Fatty, sugary foods usually release hormones that help us deal with stress, so there's a reason that we like comfort foods. Maybe a hot drink, hot chocolate, maybe something with a little more kick. There's a line of a song that says, "Some find their solace in a bottle of gin." Some people turn inward when life hurts, pull back from the normal routine in relationships. I had a friend at a hotel that I worked at who didn't come to work for 3 months because he was depressed, just couldn't get out of bed. Some people like to take long walks, listen to music, write in their journal. Others get more busy, try to get active, surround themselves with people all the time, socialize, volunteer, visit family and friends. And there's truth to the saying that says time heals all wounds. So we have this idea, just keep on going. Just keep on trudging along and it'll get better. And for some, that's a comfort. And all these things might make us feel a little bit better if things aren't going our way. But it might interest you to know that the definition of comfort we find in the Bible is different. That's not the same thing. Paul writes about the God of all comfort in 2 Corinthians, and he uses the word several times. Let me read it for you here. All praise to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all their troubles so that we can comfort others. When they're troubled, we'll be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. For the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will shower us with his comfort through Christ. Even when we're weighed down with troubles, it's for your comfort and salvation. For when we ourselves are comforted, we will certainly comfort you. Then we can patiently endure the same things we suffer. We're confident that as you share in our sufferings, we will also share in the comfort God gives us. We think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure. We thought we'd never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely on God who raises the dead. And he did rescue us from mortal danger, and he will rescue us again. We've placed our confidence in him, and he will continue to rescue us. And you're helping us by praying for us. Then many people will give thanks because God has graciously answered so many prayers for our safety. Paul wrote this when he was going through a hard time, and so hard, he says, I didn't think I was going to make it. Like Paul knew about life kicking the snot out of you. And he says God was the source of some comfort in those hard times. Is that what he said? No, God is the source of all comfort. God is merciful and the source of all comfort. He's better than all those other things we turn to for comfort combined. And his comfort is something so much more than those things can give. Because the word comfort in the Bible has to do more with strengthening than it has to do with soothing. It doesn't just relieve our pain, it stiffens our resolve. The Greek word means to help by giving courage. And the English word also points us in the same direction, because the word comfort comes from the Latin root fortis, which means strength. And it shows up in words like forte. What's his forte? What's his strength? Fortress, fortitude, comfort. According to the Bible, this isn't about feeling better. Like God doesn't come along just, hey buddy, it's going to get better. Trust me, it's going to get better someday. I don't need a pat on the back when life kicks us in the face. Strength gives us strength to get up again. I've never seen anyone's knees buckle at bad news, but I know it happens. And I've known someone, as I said, who couldn't get out of bed for months. We need strength in these times. God gives something that chocolate ice cream certainly never can. Another thing about biblical comfort is that it's something imparted to us. If you've been in Pentecostal circles ever at all, you might have heard the word paraclete, which is the word for the Holy Spirit, the comforter. It's the Greek word for the comforter, someone who comes alongside to help, someone who comes alongside to give you strength. Real comfort can't be found in a bowl of beef stew or a shot of whiskey, a walk in the woods. When you're hurting, you need someone to come alongside you in order to provide you with the strength you don't have. And I have a few examples of what I'm talking about. There's a fellow named Bob Greene who described a season of hurt in his life, and he says this: "When my wife died, I was so numb I felt dead myself. In the hours after her death, our children and I tried in vain to figure out what to do next, how to get from hour to hour. The next morning, one of those mornings when you awaken, blink to start the day, realize anew what just happened, and feel the boulder press against you with such weight that you fear you'll never get up. You ever had that? You wake up some days and you just wish, man, I'm sorry I woke up." Because then you remember all the stuff you have to deal with. The phone rang. It was Jack. I didn't want to hear any voice, even my friends. I just wanted to cover myself with darkness. I knew he'd be asking if there was anything he could do, and I didn't know what to tell him. It turned out he already done it. "I'm in Chicago," he said. "I took the first flight this morning. I know you probably don't want to see anyone. That's okay. I've checked into a hotel. I'll just sit in my room in case you need me to do anything. I can do anything you want, or I can do nothing." He meant it. He knew the best thing he could do was to be present in the same town. So he sat there until I gathered the strength to say I needed him. And then he sat with me and knew that I didn't require a conversation, did not welcome chatter, did not need anything beyond the knowledge that he was there. Then he helped me with things no man ever wants to need help with. Brought food for myself and my children, got me through those days. Bob wasn't going to find comfort. He needed lying in bed for a while longer, taking a walk, or going back to work. He needed someone to bring it to him, someone to show up and help him. It's wonderful to have friends like that when life hurts, but there's only so much that human comfort can give us. Friends eventually have to go home. Their strength runs out. They have their own hurt and their heartache to deal with. The best friend to have in times like that is God himself. He never leaves. His strength never runs out. I want to read another story of comfort. There was a pastor named Ed who was driving bus for kindergarten-aged kids. And I get that because I drove bus for a while, and like for a variety of ages, but I get what he's saying here, because one of those boys was named Ryan. And he had some interesting stories to tell about Ryan and whatever. But one day Ryan was tragically killed in an accident at a Halloween party. Tragedy. There was a funeral on a Saturday, and he went there. He saw the parents. They'd split up. The stepmother was there, so the father, the stepmother, and his mother. And he says, I looked at the boy's body in the casket, and I thought I detected a little bit of Halloween makeup on his ear. Don't cry, you idiot. You'll upset his parents. I looked up. No one was left in the room except these three parents. I walked up to shake their hands. I was Ryan's bus driver. His mom's eyes began to glisten. Watch it. Don't get her started. I told them about the day Ryan fell asleep on the bus and missed his stop. Ed had only found out about it when he went to park the bus, because Ryan said, well, I didn't want to bother you. And even as they laughed at the story, I could see tears begin to well up in everyone's eyes. Way to go, Ed. Now you made them cry. Ryan's mom started to speak, then grabbed me tight and started shaking with those choking sobs that I dreaded worse than anything. To make matters worse, I started crying too. Not discreetly, but all noisy and messy. I held this young mother I'd never met before and wished I had something to say that would turn their attention away from my tears and my runny nose. A thought came to me. It sounded good until I said it out loud. Just remember, I said, when we'd all quieted down a little, God knows the pain of losing a son too. And with those words, another wave of grief crashed over us. As soon as I could, I got out of there. I feared I had poured salt in the wounds of their hearts. So after Christmas, he had appendicitis and he was at the hospital. Turns out that Ryan's mother was a nurse and she was on there at shift. She was there on shift. And as he's lying there waiting for her test before surgery, she came in to give him an IV. And she said, I want to thank you for being there that night. I can't tell you how much your words about God understanding, have helped me over these past few months. But the fact that you cared enough to cry with us meant more than anything. And I think that illustrates two things. The first is God knows. See, the book of Hebrews tells us that Jesus gets us. He understands all our weakness. He lived as a man. He suffered and he died. He understands. We have a great high priest, it says, who understands our weakness. We can go to him because he gets it. Jesus knows what it means to have the snot kicked out of you. He lived it. He's able to empathize with us. And the second thing is sometimes we can give strength to someone just by sharing their grief. Comfort isn't about making us feel better. It's about giving us strength. And Paul says here in 2 Corinthians, he comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they're troubled, we'll be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. And God gives us comfort in a few ways. One of the primary ways is through people. When God gives you comfort, he gives you enough to have leftovers. So not just, if we think selfishly, give me comfort, God, but the other side is, let me be a comfort. He's left me with more than enough. The well never runs dry. His power is infinite. No matter how many times we get banged around or knocked over, his life, strength continue to flow. In fact, the more we get knocked around, the more we're able to bless others by what flows out of us. I want to read one more story. A fellow says, when I was in high school, my father passed away rather suddenly, just 2 days before my high school graduation. At that time in my life, I was a baby Christian, immature, shallow, still drying off the baptistry waters. All I cared about was not going to hell. But then my dad died, and I found myself in a place I'd never been before. I wanted to hear God speak. I wanted to know what he had to say about this situation. How is he going to get me and my family through this difficult time? So I prayed, and I waited for God to speak. Then came the day of the funeral. Church was packed. Sat on the front pew with my mother and 2 younger sisters. The priest spoke. I don't remember what he said. I continued to wait for God to say something. Then the service was over. Tradition of this church to have the family in the foyer. People would pass by, offer us words of comfort, condolence, encouragement. Tears were shed, hugs were offered, words were given. I don't remember what anybody said to me in that time, but I continued to wait for God to speak. Then I saw Kim O'Quinn. She was my age. We were in youth group together. When she got to me, she didn't say a word. She had tears in her eyes. She simply hugged me and walked off. But I heard God speak. And it dawned on me. Just months before, I had attended another funeral. The funeral for Kim O'Quinn's father. In that moment, she knew exactly what it meant to be me. If you want to hear God's voice in your life, look no further than the one who knows exactly what it's like to be you. He knows what it is to be human. He knows what it is to suffer. He knows what it is to be rejected. If you want to hear God speak, allow your soul to be quiet long enough that you can hear the one who was in the beginning say to you, draw near to me, and I'll draw near to you.